This week on Behind the Pulpit, our teens are back from their week-long missions trip in the Dominican Republic. We have two of them with us here today to tell us all about it.
Being able to serve in multiple different ways, from just basic work of picking up a shovel and moving dirt to handing out food, and being able to just pray for people. The way they're able to touch you in more ways than you thought you could touch them, if that makes sense. Yeah, very moving trip.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot going on in our world, so we will dive into a flurry of news stories.
And then the 2024 Paris Olympics opening ceremony was not without controversy.
We will dive into the topic of eschatology as we discuss Pastor Dave's sermon on the Olivet Discourse and put a bow on it with a Theology Sprint.
I'm going to pick up the whole world and drop it on your head.
Wherever you may be watching or listening to this today, we hope you're having a wonderful day. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's edition of Behind the Pulpit.
Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for July the 29th, 2024. It's hard to believe that we're at the end of July the 29th. It just kind of rolls off the tongue. Pastor Dave, so glad you're here today. That is a beautiful shirt you're wearing over there.
Thank you.
Talk a bit about it. How does it feel? Tell me about your material over there.
It's comfortable. The fibers are wonderfully woven together. It's a good.
Is there a thread count in that?
Millington Baptist Church tree action going on. I'm not sure, but it's quality. I'm enjoying it, man.
It is. Yeah. It is. I also enjoy mine, although I'm not wearing it today. I got my other shirt on.
Yeah.
Trying to look, look good over here.
I see your branding with your other.
I am. This is my Colson Fellows tumbler right here. By the way, I have Mark working on a online apparel store, which will be coming at some point in the future, and you too might be able to purchase a shirt like Pastor Dave over there. So you could look like him. If I could get if I could get more, I'll get more of that shirt.
All right.
There you go. Awesome. Well, we're glad you're joining us today here on Behind the Pulpit. We have a very special episode. We're actually going to be finishing off season, what are we on, season 2? Season 2? Season 2 is ending today. We're done. Dave and I need a break. We need to go, take a nap for August. Actually, we got some other projects we got to work on.
Just keeping it real.
We will be back in the middle of September when we kick off our Revelation series. So it's going to be wild here for
the unveiling.
A couple months. It's going to be there is going to be an unveiling. We'll have to get behind a curtain or whatnot. But before we get there, we thought that we would debrief a very special trip that just happened over the last week, and so we have two very special guests on here to my left. Look at this. Look at that. Poof! Here they are. Why don't you introduce yourselves to the watching audience?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Felicity. I just graduated in 2024. So, yes, I just got back from the Dominican Republic.
The Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Was it hot down there?
Very, very hot.
UV was like 14 at one point.
It was. Looks like you guys did pretty well with your sunscreen because you don't look too terribly tan.
Oh.
Yeah. Were you wearing hats or whatnot?
That's
or is this tan? I don't know.
This is tan for us.
This is very tan for us.
I feel you. That's about as tan as I get too.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about.
We got our second guest.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, here we go. Sorry.
I'm Luke Williams. I just graduated as well from Watching Hills. Just got back from this trip. Very eye-opening, very humbling trip, and a very important experience that I needed to have.
Cool.
Very wonderful. Well, we got some questions. You guys were gone for a week. Why don't you give us can you give us in 60 seconds the highlights, and then maybe we can do some follow-up based on what you say.
Yeah. Oh boy, there's so many highlights.
So much. So much packed in 1 week. Being able to serve in multiple different ways, from just basic work of picking up a shovel and moving dirt to handing out food, and being able to just pray for people. The way they're able to touch you in more ways than you thought you could touch them, if that makes sense. Yeah, very moving trip.
Yeah.
So you got prayer, you have mercy ministry with food. What other kind of activities were you guys doing?
There was a lot of kids ministries that we were volunteering at as well. So on I think it was Tuesday and Thursday, we volunteered at more like official kids ministries. We're like playing sports with them, face painting, nail polish, tattoos. But then on the other days when we would go and visit some of the villages and give out food to some of the people in their homes and pray for them, like all the kids would come out and we would just play with them.
What kind of
really
sports?
cool.
They were wicked at baseball.
Okay.
Some kids. Well, I wasn't.
Wait. There was a good baseball player from the Dominican Republic.
Okay. That's good to know.
A lot of major leaguers come from the DR, so I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I helped a little bit with the kids. I was mainly working with just doing work around the school, and I was able to work with a lot of the people with Handfuls of Hope. But I was able to watch from a distance with everybody playing with the kids, and how much the group was able to really touch these kids in their lives. Just as simple as passing a ball to these kids, you could see the smiles on their face, and it was really touching, really moving.
Yeah.
So just like real talk, did Felicity actually participate in any of these
she-
sports, or is this like a?
Are you not an athlete?
I am not an athlete.
Oh,
I did
okay.
not participate in any of the but
Somehow you weaseled out of every sport.
somehow I weaseled out of every sport
Wow,
and weaseled
okay.
myself in to
Other activities.
other activities like dancing, nail polish, face paint,
Dancing
tattoos.
you can do.
Okay.
No. Dancing was fun.
They know how to dance in the DR, though, Pastor Dave.
Amazing.
They know how to
They were
dance.
really,
Amazing.
really good.
Okay.
It was like really cool to not only like hang out with some of the kids, but like one of the cool things is you kind of got to connect with adults in the Dominican as well. And so you would find some volunteers that could speak a little bit of English and you spoke like a little bit of Spanish. And so it was really cool not only to connect with the kids that were there, but it was really cool to hear some of the adults' stories.
Yes.
It was like you're there to serve them, but they bless you too.
Yes.
Great. That's wonderful. So what were the so you mentioned sports camps, tracks. Did
Yeah.
you guys do some other activities? And
Sports camps, handed out tracts on the first day, which I guess I'll just...
you mentioned a little bit of construction, moving dirt.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about the tracts is like you would hand out a tract to someone and like the Handfuls of Hope leaders would say like if you were to do this in Manhattan, like they would throw it on the ground and spit in your face. But when you hand it out there, like you say like Dios te bendiga, God bless you, and you hand them the tract and they will literally look at you and they'll say, oh my gosh, like muchas gracias, and then they'll open it up and they'll read it in front of your face. Yeah.
Everyone there had gratitude in a way that I've never seen. They really did. You could see them enjoying what they were reading. And I don't, if you saw that, if you did that in New York, like I doubt you would have gotten any reaction like that.
No.
So it was a really cool thing to see.
Oh, you would have gotten a reaction in New York, all right.
Yeah.
Colorful
Wow.
one, maybe.
Luke, are you also dabbling in any Spanish, or was that not part of your
I
Watch
tried a
on
little
Hills
Duolingo,
education?
before I came, but the language barrier definitely was the tough part. But
Yeah.
there was a cool when we were at the girls' orphanage, the leader, I guess, was praying for everyone, and I had no idea what she was saying, but you could feel through the Holy Spirit what she was saying, if that made sense, and how moving it was without even like understanding the language she was speaking in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's actually a barrier that can be broken because of our spiritual
Yes.
kindredship with them. That's really cool.
Yes, that's so true. Like a lot of things transcend language.
Yes.
Like fun transcends language. Like baseball
Music.
transcends language.
Sure.
Yeah.
Music. Really cool.
Yeah, very cool. So how many people went on the trip? Remind us.
40 something?
47.
47.
Including the adults.
Including adults.
47,
Wow.
including adults.
It's really a
Okay.
successful trip. I mean, we've been obviously supporting this trip and announcing this trip and praying for this trip and doing a lot of fundraisers for this trip for months and months and months. So it's cool to see
Yeah.
the culmination. And I look forward to that blog post that would come out every night just to see what you guys were up to.
Yeah.
And I was,
Although I asked Felicity yesterday, and she was like, "Oh, we had a blog."
I don't know
It
if
was
the
kind of
students
under
were
the
really
radar. Somebody was
involved.
creating it.
Yeah, I think Johnny was doing that late at night, so it was
Yeah.
nice to see each day and how it progressed. Did you guys have anything that you would say, hey, here's the number one thing that I took away from this trip? This is the memory that stuck in my mind. When this happened, this was really cool, really amazing. A moment that you'll carry with you. Do you guys each have one of those? What would you say? Or just pick one. It doesn't. Maybe I'm putting
It's
too
a
much
lot.
pressure on
Or
you.
maybe
There's just so
maybe
many.
was there
Yeah.
something that surprised you? You were expecting something, and then this was completely not what you were expecting when you went down there.
I would say just their overall kindness and acceptance towards us.
A very receptive culture to
Yes. That was
gospel,
really
yeah.
shocking. Yeah, that's what I would say. And it kind of, I think Eric Dowden was talking a little bit about this, but he was like, because we've been accepted like this and because people have been so kind to us, we have to go home and behave the same way that we were treated. Really, really huge culture shock there. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
I
How about
think-
you, Luke?
I think the most moving part was when we got to the village and these kids were so excited to see us, and like although we had this food and water, and I thought they were excited to get this food and water from us, but they were excited just to be with us, just to play with us, them just climbing on us, like on our shoulders and stuff. That's what they enjoyed most about being with us, and I think that was really cool, that a village that doesn't always have something to eat at night, and they were more excited to see us than the food and water, and that just completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ministry of presence and the body of Christ just coming in to give them some love and some care and just some fun can be a huge way that God can use you guys. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure they loved having you there. I know Tim, our producer, got to go as well, and
I did.
I don't know if Tim, you want to jump in here with any.
Do you have any answers to our questions, Tim?
Yeah.
You have a big takeaway?
Our two guests said some amazing things that I thought as well.
Did Tim leave the hotel room, or was he there the whole time?
Oh, I was out. I was out there. I had two quick things that I thought were really cool. First one was Don, I forget, Cords. I was with him and his wife, and we were bringing water to a work site that I believe Luke was actually working at the time. And he's like, all right, we're going to go. I think we have some time to pass out some more food. And so the plan is we're going to go back to the school, get the bags, and we're going to go to the warehouse. We're going to get the manna packs, which are these plastic packs of like rice and soy with added nutrients. We're going to pack them up, and then if we have time, we'll go pass them out in one of the villages. So I said, all right, let's go. Let's do it. On the horse. And he turns to me, he says, you know what, Tim, it's the difference between someone gets to eat tonight or they don't. And, that really impacted me for the rest of the week. I think that was Monday night.
Wow.
And then the other thing Felicity was talking about a little bit was the language. I thought it was so cool. The first day we were there, we were in this children's hospital, and one of our guys that we were with, his name was Josias. Shout out to him. I'm going to be sending this to him later. Him just praying in Spanish over these children and their mothers who were there. I didn't understand a single word, but you just felt the Holy Spirit's presence in that moment. And then later in the week, to finish off the week, we were at a girls' orphanage. And then there was a moment where we were singing the same worship song in two different languages, and you just felt how big our God is there in that moment. It was really special.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
Very good.
All right.
Welcome
Well,
back.
thanks for
So glad
sharing.
that you guys got to be used by the Lord this past week.
If there's
And,
anything that we bring up later in the show that reminds you of DR stuff, feel free to jump in.
Jump in.
Yeah, or if you just say, you know what, I forgot to mention this. I got my takeaway. We'll rewind back.
Okay.
How about that? Deal?
Sounds good.
Deal.
Cool. All right, good. All right, we're going to move on to our next segment, our world-famous segment that we call In the News.
Is this
All right,
really
so-
world famous?
It is. Listen, we are getting Tim, where is the furthest away this show is getting watched? I heard like somewhere in Africa somebody's watching
we have
this.
had
Ukraine,
had Asia,
Kazakhstan.
we've had in the Middle East, we've had Lebanon.
Did you hear that?
We've
the
had
Middle East.
Lebanon.
Boom.
People watching this, Canada.
Actually, if you guys have any DR contacts, you can like show the.
That's right.
We're going to
We
send
go
it to
all
you.
over the
your
place.
DR
There we go.
recap. Maybe we'll get some DR.
We're
views this week.
getting views, as they say.
Yeah.
All right. So in the news, did anything happen? A lot of these are. It's crazy to me how quickly the news cycle changes and how many different things come
I
up
can't
nowadays.
keep up, man. I can't.
Like
keep up.
we're talking 2.5 weeks ago, the potential, the former president was almost assassinated, and we're not even talking about that anymore. It's crazy.
That was 2 weeks ago, Bob.
So it was so July, whatever the date was. All right. Anyway, so there was a couple major things that happened. So I'm going to let you take the lead on the first story because you were the one that actually sent it to me. I didn't even know it happened until after you sent it to me, and then I looked it up.
Oh.
So why don't you share a little bit about this that's been making the rounds, and then I have a secondary thing that I think ties in with it.
I love the Olympics. I watch them every 4 years.
So hold on. Would you say that you are an athlete?
I dabble. I wouldn't
Okay.
say I'm.
So-
I'm no Luke Williams.
But your genes did not get passed on to the next generation.
No.
Well,
No?
Felicity, I think she has gross motor
And
skills,
oh.
but she just doesn't like to apply them in that context.
I saw Felicity get vaulted into the air in the ocean the one time.
Facts.
See, there's
A great
skills.
back-
Do we
She-
have
she
video
got
of her
some ups.
shooting a basketball at all? Or
Oh
does
no,
that
she
have your-
didn't. She didn't touch a
I don't
basketball
know
all
if we
week.
ever played basketball together. But she can dance anyway. So I love the Summer Olympics are my favorite compared to the winter. But yeah, I just love track and field. That hasn't started yet. A couple days from
Yeah,
now, it'll
yeah.
be really fun. I know Tim was a huge track star, and
You're not following Simone Biles on the Olympic?
I watched Simone's
Okay.
what do we call it? Her
Comeback?
last night she had a presentation. There's a name for it, but where they do the
montage. Yeah.
the uneven bars stuff. She was great. Good to see her back,
okay.
and it was
All right.
it was a really cool. There's been some good swimming going on. There's a couple guys from Jersey. Just shout out. There's one swimmer. I think he's from Warren. He went to Pingree.
There's somebody from Denellen, too. My wife looked it up. There's 29 people from New
Sydney
Jersey.
McLaughlin,
29
world
people from New
record
Jersey.
holder in the 400 hurdles.
Yeah,
That's the Denellen person?
Yes.
Wow.
I actually
Boom.
I competed alongside her at a meet in high
oh
school
my
once.
goodness, Tim.
Dude, you know her?
Whoa.
No, so okay, so my quick Sydney
Is she
McLaughlin
a
story.
Gen Z person?
Yeah, she's a year older, younger than I am, same age actually. I
Gen
think.
Z representing.
So when you saw, I was at a couple of meets with Sydney McLaughlin, and everyone should be running over trying to take pictures with her, and I kind of felt bad for her because she's obviously this she's even then in high school is just this superstar. So I was at the Armory in New York City competing in triple jump, and she was next to me on the runway doing long jump, and she jumped, and right before I jumped, I said, "Nice jump, Sydney," and she said, "Thanks," and that was it.
Nice.
So if
Tim.
you're saying if you went over to Paris right now and you walked up to her and said, "Nice jump," would she remember you?
No,
Like, hey, what's up, Tim? Good to see you
Absolutely
again.
not.
Tim!
So track and field starts in a couple days.
All right.
I did watch the men's Olympic basketball game yesterday where they won against Serbia. And since 1992, when the Dream Team first came out and like the NBA players like stormed the Olympics, the competition has gotten a lot better because now there's a lot of international players being recruited into the NBA, and then of course they disperse to their countries. And Serbia has Jokic and some other guys. So it was a good game, but USA dominated. So that was good. I've watched Katie Ledecky swim, Simone Biles. Friday's just the opening ceremony. I just wanted to see the guys come in on the boats, and I wanted to see the torch get lit. And I thought, hey, this is cool. France, Eiffel Tower, probably going to be fun.
And then
The
boom.
2024
Boom.
Paris Olympics opening ceremony was not without controversy. So there was a few things that were troubling. There was some sort of portrayal of Da Vinci's Last Supper. That
Although is that
featured-
in dispute? Somebody was telling me they're disputing that
It
it
is in
wasn't
dispute.
actually that. It was
people
like something
people are
else.
saying that it was a depiction of the feast of Dionysus,
right?
which I haven't seen.
But
I don't know what
but
that looks
the
like.
official people that did this didn't say that though.
The official people that
it's
did
weird.
this
It's very weird.
seemed to admit that it looked just like Da Vinci's Last Supper, and the people were in their poses, and they were sort of drag queens along with like this small child at the table posing in a way that seemed to many Christians worldwide, especially Catholics, as very blasphemous and very offensive. So I was like, what is going on here? And then there was some weird thing in a library where there was 3 people, and then they were like very intimately involved with each other, and then they moseyed their way up to a hotel room together, and they were all over each other, and then they shut the hotel room in the camera's face like, hey, you can't see any more of this activity. And it was, why do we need to see this as part of the opening ceremony?
Yeah.
So this was their way of featuring the value of inclusion, and I think a lot of Christians didn't feel very included by this kind of opening ceremony. So it was troubling to a lot of people to see. I actually shut it off after that point because it was just so I don't know.
Well, I didn't see that. I
Inappropriate.
caught the end of it. So the end where they finished off and they lit the torch was kind of cool.
Yeah.
The torch was like a balloon, a hot air balloon that went up and they lit it and it went up in the air.
Yeah.
And then you had Celine Dion like singing off of the Eiffel Tower.
They had
which
Rafa.
was kind of crazy.
Rafa
Celine's
Nadal
song
was the
off
guy,
the
right?
charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Especially she's got this neuromotor disease right now, so it was a pretty cool comeback in and of its own right.
Yeah, she had done it, what, two Olympics ago or 3
I think
Olympics
so.
ago?
I think so.
So the Olympics are off and running, and we'll probably have some news stories about that next time. But that was something that Christians were talking about.
That was that news story. The other thing is we got an election going on here in the U.S., and as usual, candidates are going back and forth saying different things. And the vice presidential person on the Republican side, J.D. Vance, is getting criticized for some comments he made about single people. And he's being criticized for people are now calling him weird because he basically was putting out an argument to say that it's important that we get married and have kids. And your views aside on the politics stuff, I did think it was worthy to talk a little bit about the Christian view of marriage and the importance of having kids and continuing on building families. One of the things I think that's troubling in the societal trend right now is that marriage, people that are getting married and having kids is going down. And that's problematic for a number of different reasons, because once you get married and you have kids, you start to see the world a little differently. I don't know. Did you see the world differently once you had kids? You think about issues a little differently?
I've never been the same since.
So so once that happens, you start to think differently than when you're single. But also,
you know what I've heard really changes you? The grandkids moment.
Really?
Yes. You
And why is
begin
that?
to really start to shift your focus.
Because you realize you're going to die pretty soon? Or?
Yeah, it's in touch with your mortality, and you start to think like really long-term projects and legacy thinking. So that's an interesting moment too. But kids definitely. What's that book called? How Children Raise Parents?
How Children Raise Parents.
Yeah.
That was a Dan Allender book. But I think the other issue that people are pointing to is that because the birth rate is going down, we're now getting to, in the U.S., to be below the replacement rate of having younger people in the workforce, which has issues along a lot of different lines, including Social Security, because once we retire, if there's no people in the workforce, our benefits are going to go down. But from the Christian worldview perspective, we think marriage and family is a hugely important thing, that people should be having kids, they should be passing on the faith to the next generation, and that primarily happens in the home. So it's an interesting cultural discussions to listen into how people are talking about these things that we would view to be very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a trend happening in other countries, and we haven't yet seen the downward trend
China,
as drastically
Europe,
here in the United States, but it's starting to go in the direction that's
down.
troubling.
There's a phenomenon called the dinks. Have you guys heard about the dinks? Tim, do you know about the dinks?
I've heard about these dinks, but remind me.
Double income, no kids. They might have a dog. Double income, no kids. That's what a dink stands for. So.
My middle daughter, Michaela, this morning was trying to coax me into getting a dog. I told her no. There's some plants on the patio I'm having trouble keeping alive now. So I don't know how I can manage a dog right now too in my life. It's just a lot.
How long do you have to be married before you're considered a dink?
I think one day.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think these are people that are that but have no intention of having kids just because they don't want to.
I see.
It's not that we're gonna try in a year or two because we just got married. I'm not gonna have kids. Yeah, I'm good with my cats or my dogs or whatever, or not even that. I'm just good because I'm saving up my money.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah. You're not a dink yet, Tim.
I thought dinking was more universal than that. It's just
Yeah.
like pre-kids, but maybe I'm using the phrase wrong.
Well, yeah, well, maybe it is, but I think it's not the same thing as to say I'm definitely not having kids versus
That's a different category.
You know, or you can't have kids.
Right.
Like you're wrestling through,
Dink plus versus
Which is,
just dink.
which was actually part of the JD Van. He wasn't criticizing people that for whatever reason couldn't have kids.
It just as a caveat, I don't think we're saying that there could never be a legitimate reason to choose
Right.
that kind of lifestyle. Maybe you wanted to commit your life to the Lord, or you have some other infertility issues that you're dealing with. I don't think we want to be so blanket just to say this. There's never an appropriate time to make that decision. But the reasons given in the study for people choosing not to have children tend to be more selfishly focused. I think they're just saying,
Right.
we just don't want to, or we're just not interested in that. They don't seem to have a visionary, purposeful reason for their choice not to continue on their family. So that's troubling.
Yeah. Good. All right. Now, one more story that I think is more, I don't know, let's say lighter, or maybe not, is that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been on the downward trend recently, and they just made a large announcement at Comic-Con in the last couple days. Robert Downey Jr., who famously played Tony Stark and had a wonderful send-off in 2019 at the end of Avengers Endgame, is apparently coming back as Doctor Doom. Tim, did you see this announcement?
I did. I was confused.
It's a money grab.
Luke's got an opinion.
You got an opinion about this one?
That's a money grab.
For Robert Downey Jr. or for everybody else? Robert Downey
both.
Jr. apparently negotiates quite a bit of money.
Oh yeah, the most. I think he's the highest paid.
I think.
In all of Marvel.
Oh yeah, he's notoriously
Oh, yeah.
ruthless negotiator.
Yeah, let the man retire.
I know, but he's going to be Victor Von Doom. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But that happened.
He likes to play complicated roles, he said.
I heard he said new mask, same task, something like that.
Yeah, that was the
That's what he said.
That was the caption.
I do like Robbie Downey Jr. a lot, so we'll see what he does there. All right. Well, that's what's going on in the news. Check out those stories. Let us know if there's some other stories. There was other things we could comment on, but I think that's it for today. Speaking of newsworthy stories, Pastor Dave gave a sermon yesterday
I was wondering about your segue there and how you're going to handle
on
that.
well, we're not sure. It could is it newsworthy? Is it old news? That was the topic of your sermon yesterday.
Exactly. You were paying attention.
Luke 21, the very famous Olivet Discourse. And you gave us some food for thought. I had more than one person come up to me and say, I never thought about that. I never knew that. So
Okay.
you opened the minds of numerous folks yesterday. So could you, in 60 seconds, give us an overview of what you talked about? And then I do have some questions for you. And maybe the young ones over here do as well.
Luke 21, parallel passage in Matthew 24 and Mark 13 is called the Olivet Discourse. It's a discourse where Jesus talks about the destruction of the temple, which is imminently coming, and decides to disclose some future prophecies to a small group of his disciples. And so in this sermon, this is the one where Jesus predicts some signs that will be in the future, like wars and persecutions and false teachers and things like that will arise. And then he also says something else will happen called the abomination of desolation. And then he says that the Son of Man will come with power and glory, and that these things will occur, according to Luke chapter 21, within this generation. And so there's some different opinions about what exactly is he predicting there. There's two main views, and there is a chart for that. I did send a chart to Tim to help me.
There was lots of charts, man.
Explain these two different views. So there's two main views on this passage. There's the futurist view, which I think most people are already familiar with. This is like the tribulation is yet to come in the future. And then there's the preterist view, which is that the tribulation was future from the time that Jesus was saying it was coming, but it's past in our perspective, and it's already occurred between the year AD 67 and AD 70. So good Bible-believing Christian scholars debate this topic. There's a lot of reasons for both of those positions. They have application to all of us, I think, and it's a wonderful passage with a lot of good application. But don't miss the point. The point for his listeners and for all of us is that we should all be living lives that are watchful and ready and prepared to meet the Son of Man one day.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's
now,
a summary.
and would you? So you said two, but then would you categorize the third one in terms of this dual fulfillment idea as being a third category?
Yeah.
Where people would say this indeed did happen in the '60s, the first '60s, but then it's a prefiguration of things that are potentially going to come at the end of the age, or they are recapitulated throughout the ages.
Right.
Is that a third category, or would you put that in kind of a sublet type thing?
I mean, there's a different category called idealism that would better characterize that kind of view. Although some
that seems
futurists,
like that category is misnomered. Is it really idealistic to think the tribulation is happening over and over?
oh, the idealist in the sense that here is a motif that continues to repeat itself generationally. So that's a different way to think about it. But some futurists are still dual fulfillment people, that they see something in the past as prefiguring something in the future. So you could be a futurist and still hold to that view too. Or you can have a good Grover impression and go near far. So that's the cartoon image I gave in the message. So
Okay, so just because this was a question that I had. So if you are a futurist and you do think, and I find it hard to think. I mean, you gave some pretty specifics in the message on the fulfillment in AD 70. I find it hard to not think that something was up there because it was so specific. If you're a dual fulfillment person, are you automatically a futurist then?
you can't
Or
be.
are there
you
some
can't
people
be
that
a
are
preterist.
futurists that would not would say AD 70 is that's not something we should think about?
I've not run into any futurists that didn't at least nod towards AD 70 and those things that occurred. But most of them would say this is there's something going on beyond AD 70.
Okay.
But eschatological positions, in terms of theology, there's one area of theology, the study of last things, that I think has the most amount of amicable disagreement. And so this is an area where we as Christians should be able to be humble and have good, solid conversations with each other about views and perspectives. So I hope that was just a little bit of a taste of that, as we will be doing that a lot more in our fall series through Revelation. Sometimes you're taught in ways that you're handed one system, and they hand it to you as if it's perfectly coherent. Like, here's the system. I have it all figured out. Every verse makes sense. They all fit together. I have an answer to every single question. I have a rebuttal to every single objection, even though these separate systems are totally contradictory to each other. You're going to say, how is that possible? The reason that's possible is because there's a set of decisions that you have to make prior to coming to any passage, and those decisions steer the way that you're going to go on those passages. And so a better question to ask ourselves when we're studying eschatology is, why do I come to this passage with the presuppositions that I'm bringing to this passage, and where did I get them, and why do I land where I land? Because there are answers to that question. There are reasons for those answers. And so there's a lot of different views, but I think we can come at it in a little bit more of a humble posture. So
Yeah, good. So I have another question that maybe you guys can be thinking if you had an observation or a comment. So that was the first question I asked was in relation with the futurist. So if I'm a preterist and I think all this happened in AD 60, I think when we approach the text, we're asking ourselves, the people that are originally receiving this, the original audience, how did this text matter to them? But then we're also saying, in where we're living now, in the locus of history, how does that text apply to me? So I get, if you're a preterist, there's a whole lot of application for that generation, the original audience. But then if you think everything happened back then, how does that text now apply to me? What are the principles that I can pull out if everything happened in AD 70? But nothing is happening in the future?
there are really two sets of applications, which was really tricky to finish the sermon yesterday, because the preterist would apply it one way and the futurist would apply it a very different way.
Right,
So
right.
I came up with applications that would apply to everyone, which is, number one, you should read this text, realize that Jesus accurately predicted the future, and stand back in awe of the fact that our Christ was able to do that. He is our Messiah. And then I didn't mention this in the sermon, but I thought it was interesting. I thought of this. I don't know if anybody's ever thought of this before, but probably somebody has. he's filling the role of prophet, priest, and king. So in chapter 21, he's the prophet. In chapters 22 and 23, he's fulfilling the role of priest. And then in chapters 24, as he rises from the dead victoriously, he will fulfill the role as king. Prophet, priest, king.
Wow.
It's
You
pretty
just
cool
blew
thought.
my mind, right?
It's
Luke
I
is
think it's
just
there.
We just keep finding stuff. Luke, your book, man. It's just we just keep finding stuff in this book as we go along.
Yeah. So
It's cool to do a deep
that's an
dive.
application that, hey, Jesus really is the Messiah. That applies to everybody. He
Yeah.
is who he said he was. And then one of the applications I think we can all take on is Christ warned us of judgment, and we are to flee the wrath to come. And the way to do that is by listening to his words, taking them seriously, and trusting in him for our redemption. So those are some applications that apply to everybody. The futurists would have more specific applications about what to look for in the future and what's coming. And the preterists would have different ways of applying this text. So it depends which view you have. By the way, I didn't mention this in the sermon, but there are different kinds of each of those views, so they get subdivided. There's different kinds of futurists, like Pastor Bob is a historic premill, right, usually.
Yep.
And that's one kind of futurist.
Usually,
And then another kind of futurist is a dispensational
Yeah.
premillennialist, which would be more familiar with those who are raised
Well, we'll
in
just
like
say
a-
it's more complicated if
more
you're dispensational.
complicated. So those are a couple different kinds of futurists.
Yeah.
And then there's also different kinds of preterists. So there's three categories. There's mild preterism, moderate preterism, and full preterism.
Sounds
So
like a disease over there, Pastor Dave.
it's not.
I got moderate preterism over here.
Mild preterism sees these things as fulfilled within the first 300 years of church history, first upon the Jews, and then the Romans are destroyed too.
Oh, right, yeah, because of
So-
the kingdoms in Daniel.
Because of the kingdoms in Daniel, and then obviously, the city of Rome gets
Right.
knocked out too. Moderate preterism sees these things as just dealing with Jerusalem. And then there's full preterism, which believes that there actually is nothing in the New Testament that predicts any future about anything. So
Revelation is all about
all in the
past.
past.
Right.
The millennium's past. The new heavens and the new earth are already happening now. We're already in the new heavens and the new earth in full preterism. And Jesus is not necessarily personally
Interesting.
coming back. So that's a full preterist position. I think that's heterodox. I don't think that that's okay to hold to that
How
position.
can you say
and
there's
then-
no more death or mourning or crying or pain if we're in the new heavens and new earth right now?
Exactly.
It's
That's
more of a
interesting.
spiritualized understanding of
Oh, okay.
death and that we're alive in Christ and that we live in the new heavens and new earth in a spiritual sense. It's tricky to get
Yeah.
there. I don't think you can get there. So
Would that be more of like a neo-orthodox type, like a Karl Barth type of thing?
I'm
or-
not sure. That's
Yeah.
a good question.
All right.
So does the preterist believe that there is an end, like that Jesus is coming back at all, or they believe he's already come back? If that makes
A full preterist
Well, some of
would
them
say,
do think he's already come back.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
full
Okay.
preterist says he's already come back in the judgment upon Jerusalem. That's like extreme preterism or consistent preterism. That I don't think is consistent with the creeds of the church. Like the Apostles' Creed says, he sits at the right hand of the Father. From thence he will come to judge and the quick and the dead. So throughout church history, that's an early one. Christians have confessed his bodily physical return, and that view does not confess that. So people like Gary DeMar, full preterists, they're out there. They've been, let's say, what's the word? They've been rebuked by partial preterists who say, you've gone too far. You need to affirm the second coming of Christ and the resurrection.
Yeah.
So I don't think that view is compatible with the New Testament and the Christian scriptures. But mild and moderate preterism is a viable position.
Well, but maybe to Luke's point, though, we would say that to affirm the visible bodily return of Christ is the orthodox position.
Right.
How that all happens and the timing of different things, that's what's sort of debated. There's kind of a spectrum there.
Right.
But even a partial preterist who's like Amil or postmill would say, eventually Jesus is going to come back and make the new heavens and the new earth.
Right.
There's debate about will there be a literal millennial kingdom in the future, or will we just go right into the new heavens and the new earth?
Right.
Yeah.
You guys have any impressions from the message yesterday? Anything stick out to you guys?
I guess I would say I feel like that message is not preached on a lot. What you talked about, like Jesus coming back, and these are the signs. and this is what is going to happen. Do you think it would benefit the church to be taught more about that and more often about the fact that?
Well, it's funny that you say that. Mm-hmm. Because our next sermon series is Revelation.
Yeah, so I guess we are going to talk more about it. Do you think it's beneficial to be constantly reminded that you are going to be held accountable and Jesus is coming back?
Mm-hmm. I have some thoughts on why it's not, but let me ask Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, go first.
So there's an extreme position of like eschatological phobia, and it's this idea that I can't know anything about the future. These passages are so confusing, so I'm just going to sort of avoid teaching and preaching about it.
It's all just going to pan out in the end.
It's all going to pan out in the end. So
It's not important.
You don't see a
Right.
lot of churches going like through Revelation. It's not the most popular expositional study, and I think that's a mistake. So
Yeah.
I think these passages are instructive, and the whole counsel of God needs to be a regular part of the diet of Bible teaching. So I think there's some benefit there.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds us of the great hope that we all have, and we all need a reminder of that hope. So that's a good question.
Well, it's not just Revelation. I mean, eschatological language is all over the New Testament. I mean, if you just read the Gospels, there was a number of passages in Luke, even I was doing some reading, even that like the parable of the 10 minas that I did is very much, the king going and coming back. Like Paul talks about our citizenship is in heaven. We await a king from there, first and second. It's all over the place. Mm-hmm. So the importance of it is that what you believe ultimately about history is moving in a certain direction, and there will be an end to history. So what do you believe about that, and how does what's happening there affect how I live today? Like eschatology is important in that aspect. And then how you kind of make up how the end is going to happen does also affect certain views that you have on how you engage the world today. If it's all just going to get destroyed and then there's going to be something new afterwards, does it really matter? Should I really engage in culture or different things today, or should I just leave it be? Whereas other positions would very much see we need to be more engaged in expanding Christ's kingdom in a physical way right now,
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, what we believe about the future impacts what we do today.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Keller has a famous illustration about this, where he talks about a guy who has a job, and his job is to screw a widget onto a wadget. And this guy has to do this job for 8 hours a day for a whole year, and it's really hard, and it's really painstaking, and he doesn't enjoy it, and it's not good at all. And you got one guy who's told to do this same widget-wadget job, and he's told you're going to get paid $25,000 at the end of this year.
yeah.
Then you have another guy who's doing the same widget-wadget job, but he's told you're going to get paid $50 million at the end of this year. So based on what these two guys are told about the future, that's going to drastically impact the way that they're doing that job each day. The first guy who thinks, I'm barely going to make anything with this job, he's going, what's the point of this, man? I quit after week 1. The second guy is going, I'm going to do the best I possibly can. He's going to be whistling while he's working, and he's going to be like all into this job because of what he believes about the future. So we have prophecies and predictions and hope-filled scriptures that are given to us in the Bible that I think are motivational for us today. Yeah. So that's one of the purposes of eschatology. Yeah. So the extreme thing is not to talk about it, which I think would be a problem. The other extreme is like hyper eschatological focus. Some churches talk about this all the time, and they get really bogged down into the details, and they start to kind of forget the point of the Bible is Christ, not the point of the Bible is how does your chart of eschatology work out. So you can become sort of major on the minors, and you forget the main things and the plain things and the plain things and the main things, and you kind of get lost in the details. So that's another extreme.
Sometimes if you hyper focus on that, it takes you out of how do I live today. Mm-hmm. Like, well, Jesus is coming back, so I'm just gonna I can have a very escapist mentality. Mm-hmm. Right. One of the things I was going to mention before, the prophecy and the futurism and stuff was very big in the middle of the 20th century. People would have whole conferences about prophecy and things like that. And that, in the last, I would say, maybe 30 years, has kind of waned, because I think there's been more of a focus on the here and the now, generationally speaking. And certainly the idea of judgment, which you brought up, is not a popular topic today. We can't judge anybody, So those are some of the sociological trends that I think are leading away from us talking about some of these biblical topics.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
So I would just say, whatever your view is on the end times, just recognize none of our views are self-evident. They all have points of clarity about them, and then they all have points that are lacking in clarity about them. And everybody, I don't care who you are, myself first, everybody has some verses that don't fit exactly neatly into their view. And you have to cheat to make them fit into your view. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it like that, but everybody does that with certain verses. Everybody cheats to make their view all fit and nicely be packaged together. So just think about why you hold the view that you have and what was behind that, where were you first taught that, and maybe just be open to rethinking that, because there's some other Christians who hold different views who maybe have some reasons for their views. So
Or hold the view much more loosely.
or hold it more loosely. Yeah.
Can I just make one other comment that I thought was interesting? So you made the point about AD 70 and how the people at the time saw that as being the final vindication of Christ. Because of what the Jewish leaders finally rejecting him. I found that interesting, having gone through Luke and seen how many times Luke is writing about Jesus confronting and warning, and specifically when you're in chapter 20, he's pretty, like with that parable of the wicked tenants, he is very much being very specific with the religious leaders about the judgment that's coming. And then immediately following that, he gives this discourse pointing to what's going to happen within the 40-year time span. So I found that pretty compelling and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've been building to this point. The leaders have rejected him, and as a result, Jerusalem and Israel not receiving their Messiah will receive the just penalty for their behavior. And so Jesus is warning them about this, telling them that this is coming. He gives them 40 more years to continue to pursue him and come to him. The positive side of that is God is doing something in our world that is so much bigger than the first century temple. And he's building a temple that was going to go global, and the glory of the Lord is going to fill the earth like waters cover the sea. And it's a global missional movement that is way too big for the city of Jerusalem and way too big for the Jews. And the great thing is the Jews are scattered all over the world through the diaspora, and they're everywhere now, and they become a launching point for the gospel, so that when the missionaries go to places like Paul goes first to the synagogue and then he goes to the prison, because he's going to eventually end up there. But he starts at the synagogue, to the Jew first, then to the Greek. They're all over the world, and they now have some foundation of the scriptures and this promised Messiah that was coming. Paul goes to them, explains that he's come, and then the gospel takes root and spreads in that area. So even in their judgment, it becomes a way for God to move this message forward and take the gospel in a worldwide capacity. So in a way, though it's a very sobering passage, it's a prophecy that was given by Jesus Christ that was fulfilled to the T, and the entire world got to see his word come true. For the whole world to see that Jesus really is who he said he was, and what he said would happen actually did happen. So it's a pretty remarkable passage, as difficult as it is. So
very cool. Well, is there anything else you want to say about it, or are we okay to bring it to a close, this age to a close, as it were?
I say just let that whet your appetite. I hope that forces you to study. We do book recommendations on this show, and so I'll just do two right now. So one of the books that was super helpful to me in my study here was a view called The Great Tribulation, Past or Future. It's written by Ken Gentry and Thomas Ice. Gentry takes the preterist position, and Ice takes the futurist position. If you really want to learn more about this topic, if you want to do a deep dive into eschatology, I would recommend this book. It was very fair and very balanced, and a lot of details there. Also, Tim, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I got two books on my own, which I'm always complaining about.
You said it over there. You said it over there.
So my son-in-law bought me this. Tim, shout out to Tim. This is called Jerusalem, a Biography. This is not a Christian book, but it's written by Simon Sebag Montefiore, and it is a biography of the city of Jerusalem, starting way back when David took Jerusalem in 1000 BC, and it brings you all the way up to Jerusalem today and everything that's happened in this city. The description of the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 here is really detailed, really interesting reading. It is brutal, but I found it to be very eye-opening. This is where I found out that it actually happened in late July, which is where we are right now. So I would recommend that
Very
book.
cool.
It was very helpful. Couple books.
Happy birthday, Jerusalem.
Yeah. So it's a sad time of year for Jerusalem.
Yes.
So
Yes.
a couple books to recommend. Do a deeper dive study, but let that whet your appetite for our upcoming series, The Unveiling, the Revelation of Jesus Christ, coming in September.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to that. This upcoming week, though, Felicity and Johnny are going to be sharing a bit about the Last Supper. You want to say a bit about what you guys are thinking since you're here?
Sure. So we're going to be preaching about the Last Supper and communion. So I'm really excited for that. I've never done anything like that before. So it's going to be really cool. But I guess if I were to give a preview, I would say that we're trying to mix things up a little bit and do communion in the middle of our service and kind of really focus on what each part means. So that's all I'll say for right now.
Good little teaser.
A good, switch it up. We're really excited about it, so get ready to worship and reflect on Sunday.
Very
Cool.
good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've come to the Theology Sprint, or do we have enough content here to gather a sprint?
I have acquired a Sprint.
Okay. Is this from your friend Sydney from Denellen?
No.
Sprint, like, she's a runner?
Yes.
Okay.
She runs the 400 and the 400 hurdles.
That's a sprint.
So, Pastor Dave, you kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday in your sermon. We didn't cover it here today. How should we understand and apply the concept of literal versus symbolic interpretations of prophetic texts?
That's a great question. The word literal has been used typically by dispensational scholars to understand that we're going to take the Bible at face value. We're going to understand that if Jesus says he's going to reign for 1,000 years, then it's going to be a literal 1,000 years. If he's going to come back on a white horse, he's going to come back on a literal white horse. If there's going to be an antichrist, there's going to be a literal antichrist. If there's going to be 3.5 years, there's going to be a literal 3.5 years. So they point to the fact that a lot of the prophecies about Jesus' first coming came true in a very literal way. He literally came in Bethlehem. He literally was born of a virgin. He literally rode a donkey. Those prophecies were literally true. Therefore, we believe the prophecies about the future will be literally true as well. However, to be literal also means to understand the genre and the way that language works. So language obviously has things like similes and metaphors and pictures, and the Bible sometimes gives symbols to use as predictive verbiage to describe what's going to come in the future. So I think the word literal has been misunderstood at times, as if we don't ever incorporate symbolism into our understanding of the Bible. So those who are more amillennialist in their eschatological viewpoint and their bent would see things as a little bit more symbolic. They would see things like the monsters in Revelation as symbolizing things. They would see things like the whore of Babylon or the number 666 or things like the four horsemen of the apocalypse as being more picturesque and symbolic. And so they would see the language of Revelation to be pointing towards something beyond itself in ways that can be fulfilled as a symbol, which is still taking the Bible literally. So I think it's a little too simplistic to say that one school of eschatology takes things literally, and then another school of eschatology doesn't. I don't think that's fair. But one school of eschatology does take things in a more woodenly literal sense than the other school, who would see things in a little bit more symbolic sense. I don't know, Bob, would you add anything to that?
No, that was a good explanation. I was going to say you gave a good example of that yesterday with the judgment examples from the prophets, applying that into the coming of the Lord. I forget which verse it was. It was verse 20, 24?
Yeah. So, in the Olivet Discourse, there's this language of the sun being darkened, the moon being turned to blood, and the coming on the clouds. That is oftentimes used in the Bible as prophetic hyperbole. It's the language of decreation. It's the deconstruction of creation. And it's this idea that God's going to turn your lights out, that the whole world's going to come crashing down. Or as Eminem and Lil Wayne say, I'm going to take the whole world and drop it on your head.
Had to get it in there.
This is God saying, I'm going to drop the whole world on your head. Now, it wasn't the end of the world for that the whole world, but for that nation that was being judged, it was the end of the world for them. And so that was the idiom, that was the symbolic language that sometimes the prophets employ to describe future predictions. And so we have to take that into account when we study Bible prophecy. So hopefully that's helpful. But we'll talk a lot more about that when we get into the book of Revelation. And we talk about things like types. So types are basically a wordless prophecy, which is an interesting feature that's going to come up a lot in our study. So, Tim, hopefully that gave you a little bit of a teaser for the kind of study that we're going to be doing soon.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for that. That was a wonderful explanation. To cap off Season 2 here, let's talk a little bit about some announcements for August. Do we have any slides, or should I just make stuff
I
up here?
remember the slides that we have, so talk to me a little bit about Summer Connections.
Hey, this last Sunday is our final lunch together, Summer Connections. We hope that you're here after second service. Let's break bread together, and we love to sit down and get some good food going. It's going to be an awesome way to finish up our Summer Connections this Sunday.
Awesome.
What else?
Talk to me about the Somerset Patriots playing the Rumble Ponies.
Sign up, Rumble Ponies. It's going to be so literally the Rumble Ponies
Binghamton.
might be the if there's 4 of them, they could be the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse coming after the Patriots.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be
We could have the stars falling from the sky with the fireworks afterward and
There you
everything.
go.
Yeah.
It's going to be an apocalyptic event. That's going to be Saturday, August the 10th, but you do need to sign up like right now if you want. What's the deadline? Remind me the deadline?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible, which means today. Go and sign up as soon as you see this.
Do it now.
Maybe you can put a link in the description down there.
Pause
Consider
the
it
video.
linked.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then Night of Revival.
Oh, yeah.
Night of Revival. Again, August the 16th.
Don't want to miss
Come
it.
out. It's going to be some worship. It's going to be an amazing night. Maybe there'll be some sun being darkened on that day. I don't know. We'll see.
Could be.
All right. And am I forgetting anything?
No.
All right, good. Well, check back in with us in September. We'll have lots more to say. There's going to be lots of stuff that's starting. The unveiling, the revelation of Jesus Christ, will be here in the middle of September, and it's going to be quite
Epic.
It's going to be quite the fall, Pastor Dave. I'll just put it that way.
It's going to be an awesome
All right.
fall at NBC.
God bless. We hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful August.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Felicity.
Yes,
Good to
thank
have
you.
Thank you for having
Bye-bye.
us.
Bye-bye.